Hello everybody, it's Sean Van Dyke for New Jersey Exposed, and this video today topic is Vin Gopal. Senator Vin Gopal, our Democratic senator here in Monmouth County, has issued a statement about the George Floyd incident. So let's read what he has to say. I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's a little lengthy, but I will put the link in the description for you. Now, let me just give the disclaimer. I don't know Mr. Gopal personally. I understand through sources that I know who know him that he's a nice guy, so I'm not attacking him personally, just on his professional level. Gopal issued a statement on George Floyd's death, Ocean Township, New Jersey. New Jersey Senate Majority Conference Leader Vin Gopal, Democrat, Long Branch, released the following statement regarding the murder of George Floyd by a Minneapolis, Minnesota police officer. And he just says, I cannot and should not pretend that I have ever experienced the plight or experiences of America black community, but I want to stand and understand, and I stand with our black community and their fight for justice. Watching this video was sickening, inhumane, disgusting, and horrifying. Point blank, it was murder sanctioned by individuals sworn to protect us. Well, first of all, I don't believe an officer is sworn to protect us. They swear an oath to uphold the Constitution, to defend it against all invaders, foreign and domestic. But as we've seen in the pandemic scam, they're not doing that. They're honoring the governor's orders, not the Constitution. Watching the video was sickening, inhumane, blah, blah, point blank. It was murder sanctioned by individuals sworn to protect. The officer involved in the murder of George Floyd, without a doubt, failed to uphold their oath to protect and serve. This should not discount the tens of thousands of officers who risk their lives, here we go, risk their lives each day upholding their oath. Well, that is a bunch of crap, Mr. Gopal. And I'm so sick of hearing this crap, they're risking their lives. You mean they're risking our lives? Because apparently Mr. Gopal doesn't see the statistics on how many people get killed every year by police officers, and only about 1/10 of 1% of them go to jail for what they do. But this is such an ingrained mind virus that's out. They got a dangerous job. They're out there risking their life. The bulk of the officers are doing a great job. The bulk of the officers are doing a great job protecting the government, enforcing government laws, and generating revenue for the town. I'm so sick of this propaganda. But we must also understand that the words and apologies from upstanding members of law enforcement will not undo the pain of generations of pain, anguish, and oppression. We need action. Well, Mr. Gopal, I know you've been living on a rock, and maybe you just arrived in America the other day, but police officers here in America, they cover for one another. You know, they've got a saying, this is coming right straight from an officer I know. He says, you don't go to work hungry, you don't work wet, and you don't rat on your fellow police officer. We cannot afford to let this tragedy pass into yesterday's headline, America needs healing, and our black community. Now, I want to say something. There's yet, for anything to come out yet, that is making this a racial bias incident. There's no body cam audio that came out where this Derek Chauvin said anything racial. But these Democrats, they always want to play that race card. Yes, it's a white man on top of a black man, but you had a Chinese man there, or an Asian man there too. So I want to say to Vin Gopal, this is not racial yet, so stop making it a racial thing as of now. America needs healing, and our black community deserves justice for the bigotry and systematic... Here we go. This is white shaming, white hating. This is what these Democrats do. Now, let me say, Mr. Gopal, he's not Caucasian. But this is what the Democrats do. This is their platform. White shaming. White shaming. As if all of white people are like this. I'm not like this. I don't hate black people. I don't hate anybody unless you give me a reason to hate you, and I don't care whether you're white, black, pink, purple, green, yellow, whatever, orange, red. I don't care what you are. You treat me nice, I treat you nice. You treat me bad, I'm treat you bad. You get what you give. And it's not fair to say that this is all Americans doing this. We know who's doing it. It's law enforcement that's doing it because they pick on the poor people of our community, and that tends to be black people and people of minority race, such as Spanish, but particularly black. They pick on poor people because poor people can't defend themselves. They don't have money for a lawyer. They get a public defender that walks them down the plank. Abusive and prejudiced police officers must be held accountable for their actions, and good police officers must be empowered to speak up if they see something wrong, not pressured or ashamed to stay silent. Well, you know, Mr. Gopal, I've been saying this for several years now. I want to know, Mr. Gopal, where were you when the good sergeant over at Seagirt Police Department was being sexually harassed by the police chief? What was his name? Davenport, I think it was? Because the chief thought that the sergeant, because he served in the Navy and was a Navy, he was like part-time Navy guy. And the chief had in his brain that all Navy men are gay. And there was another officer that came to the aid of this sergeant, who by all means appears to be a very good person on paper. He serves his country. He's like 50-something years old and he's still in the Navy doing his thing. But Vin Gopal was nowhere to be found. He was busy tweeting out tweets about getting free money from the government, I guess, or some government program. So long story short, on the Seagirt incident, the sergeant and the other officers sued the Seagirt Police Department. The taxpayers of Seagirt paid a little over $1 million out to settle the case. And I believe this case was not settled. I think it was found in their favor. But anyway, over $1 million was paid out. That chief is still on the clock. I have another story going on that happened over in Rumson. That's about 2-3 years ago. I had a sergeant that reported some shenanigans going on within the agency. Guess what? Sergeant's not working there anymore. Lawsuit, settlement. What we find, Mr. Gopal, the good officers who speak up are unemployed. The other good officers don't say anything, they go with the flow. I don't know where you've been for the last how many years, Mr. Gopal, but I can tell you what, I've been reporting on it for several years now. Mr. Gopal, where were you when, this is right in your backyard, where were you when Officer Jake Pascucci, after a day of drinking at a PBA political function, left the party drunk and plowed that I forget the name, plowed that poor woman over on Ocean Avenue, smashed her to pieces, smashed up his car, and all he got was 394 days in jail, local county jail, not a prison. And I understand so far from her husband Ed that Mr. Pascucci hasn't spent one single day in jail. Where are you, Ben? Why were you speaking out about that? He's an officer. He should know better than drink and drive. Why did the other officers let him leave? You see, Mr. Vin Gopal, you can fool some of the people some of the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time. And I'm one person you're never gonna fool. Okay, let me continue about this. This incident is not an isolated one, nor does the violent policing of black Americans exist in a vacuum. Today's conflict grew from seeds of first planted 400 years ago and have been nurtured and twisted by decades of segregation and prejudice. Addressing this problem will take accountability. I'll tell you what, this is how we can solve the problem, Mr. Gopal. We'll just, since you got a little issue with white people, I'll tell you what. We'll take all the white officers off the force. Any area that's a black community, no white officers. We'll put all black officers in. We'll put officers that reflect the community. So if it's all black, Put all black officers in there. If it's all white, we'll put all white officers. If it's a Jewish community, we'll put all Jewish officers in it. If it's an Indian community, we'll put all Indian officers. How about that, Mr. Gopal? Not every cop is prejudiced. But what every cop does is cover for the bad cops. And these bad cops know what they can get away because they do it. And they get away with it because people like you don't say anything until it's the flavor of the week. Let me continue. Today's conflict grew from Caesar, blah, blah, blah. Addressing this problem will take accountability, proper bias training, support for community policing, and the installation of a culture that punishes abuse and rewards integrity. We cannot solve the problem of systematic racism overnight, but we can and must come together. Well, you know, Democrats are causing race tensions. Their whole platform's about it. So I'll finish up the video with this, Mr. Gopal. Since you've apparently been living under a rock, or just came to America. I seem to recall last year when the two officers, I think it was last year when the two officers smashed the windows in of Ernie McNally's car, 2 cars over there in Asbury Park. I think that was the one you talked about. And you were just surprised about all that's going on here. And you just found out that the 17, 18 officers at the time have been brought up on charges. I'll give you a little hint, Mr. Gopal. Why don't you go look at the state of New Jersey and find out how much money has been paid out in lawsuit settlements. That'll give you a little indication what the police are up to here in New Jersey alone. And then I would suggest you go look at the use of force report and find out what officers are in the top 10 and find out what's going on. I suggest maybe you go on YouTube and start looking around and look at the hundreds of thousands of videos out there of officers perpetrating violence on people, whether they're black, white, purple, green, whatever. And see the numerous videos out there of officers violating people's rights, of officers lying on reports. I did a story last year, I believe it was. There was a woman, there was an officer, former officer of Long Branch. He was the president or the treasurer of the local PBA 10, I think it was, and he got caught embezzling $80,000. And guess what? He's not going to jail, Mr. Gopal. Had to pay the money back, and I think he got a little probation. And then we had a similar story happen right after that. Same exact type of story. This was the woman who was in charge of the money down at Bradley Beach Fire Department, I believe it was. She embezzled like $100,000, $120,000. Well, guess what, Mr. Gopal? Besides paying all the money back, she's going to jail. So there you go. 2 similar situations. One walks with probation, and the other goes to jail. Mr. Gopal, where do you stand on Sergeant Richard Conte of Howell Township, the predator? You know, the one that wanted to have sex with a 15-year-old girl and got caught up in a sting operation with condoms in his pocket? Why don't you speak out about that, Mr. Gopal? I've been asking for months now from the state attorney general what the status is with the case. You think I'm getting a response? No. I asked Monmouth County Prosecutor's Office. Their answer is, well, we're not involved. But even though they do know what's going on. But the funny thing about it, there was other people caught in that sting operation, and they've already been through the court system and sentenced. But mum's the word with Mr. Conte, right? We all know he's getting a deal, if he hasn't gotten it already. Mr. Gopal, you gotta wake up. You're asleep. Maybe we should have a government program to help train you to see. Maybe you need to get new glasses, change your specs, because you don't see what's going on around you. And it's only because now it's the flavor of the week. Said some officer killed a man, viciously killed him. It's flavor of the week. Now you're gonna speak up and say something. This is John Van Dyke for New Jersey Exposed. I'll put the link in the description. You can go read the full thing and let me know what you think in the comment section. Till next time, people.